Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our Web3 Community Management 101 lesson 2. Last week, we had our first class where we talked about introduction to community management. We talked about challenges that community managers face. We talked about the opportunities, the pros and the cons. And if you want to become a community manager, what you should know about community managers in Web3. We also had a guest speaker section on Thursday, last week, the 31st of August, where we had James Richard Fry talk to us about how to start and stay strong as a community manager, and he shared so many insights. Don't worry if you missed out on that section. We have it up on YouTube. You can catch up with that on YouTube. Today is our lesson 2, and we're talking about community building 101. I hope that everyone can hear me. If you can hear me, just give a wave, just wave and let's see you wave. Just give a sign. You can jump, you can give a gun. Yes, 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 yes. Of course. Yes. All right. If you can't see my screen, just try moving forward and you'll be able to read and hear me clearly also. All right, so let's move on. Today we are talking about community building 101. Next slide, please. Today we're talking about community building 101, and we're going to share with you today on how to set community goals and objective, how to define your target audience, creating community identity, building, your first community guideline, or even if it's not your first, how to build your guidelines, your community guidelines the right way, how to onboard new members, and how, as a community manager, you can also promote diversity and inclusivity. And to top it all off, on Thursday, we're going to have a guest speaker who has so much experience building communities and writing about communities, who would also share practical tips with us after this class. So at the end of this class, you should be able to understand the foundation that you need for community building. So this course is for you, even if you are a seasoned pro or you are just starting out. This course will give you this lesson this week, all that you need to know about community building 101. All right. So our next slide, when it comes to so setting community goals and objectives. The first step in building a thriving Web3 community is to set clear goals and objectives, right? So, and I know we've heard of this a lot of times. The goals that you should set should be SMART goals, right? So, meaning they should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Now, SMART goals isn't just a buzzword. It's actually a principle that you should actually follow when you set goals for your community. And you want to also make sure that these goals are aligned with the needs and the wants of the community. But sometimes it can be daunting. It can be very daunting just coming into the community, right? You might not know where to start from or the right questions to ask or what are the needs of the community, right? But you can deal with all of these issues by asking yourself following question, right? So let's say you just got employed as the community manager of a community. Now, I want you to understand that whether you are a community manager or you own the community, these principles apply to you, right? So even if you are a community manager, you're working under a brand, right? Understanding the reason why the community exists will help you to set the right goals and create the right content, right? So you want to ask yourself, what is the purpose of the community? Why does the community exist in the first place? right? What do I want my community to achieve? What are the most pressing issues that my community is facing, right? What are the dreams? What are the hopes of my community members? These are questions that you take time to do your research on, right? So, what are the resources that are available for you to meet the needs of your community? And then finally, you want to also determine as a community builder and as a community manager, do you want the kind of space you want to create for the people in your community? Is it a space for them to learn, to share information, or to collaborate projects? Right? So once you have answered this question, which will take you research to get answered, you now want to move on to developing your goals. If you understand why your community exists, and you understand the needs and the issues that your community is facing, then it gives you a head start to create goals and then objectives and then metrics that you can use to measure these goals. Now, there's a very helpful framework that I like to look at this from. It's called the Spaces Model by CMX. Let's go to the next slide. So this is called the Spaces Model by CMS. And it's not just a buzzword, right? So S in this case means support, P product, acquisition, contribution, engagement, or success. Now, this is a framework that you can use to set your community goals and your objective, right? So do you want to create a community for support, right? So in this kind of community, you're organizing your members to answer questions for each other, right? To improve, in this case, customer satisfaction, right? So is that the kind of community you want to create? And then a metrics that you would use to measure the impact of this community would be, okay, how many members are asking questions versus how many members are answering these questions, the number of active users. You want to measure your engagement rate, likes, reaction, comments, right? Then P, their product, their communities that exist just to gain feedback and insights from members to improve their product. So we could have, for instance, a Web3 wallet that has a community, right? And remember that each community can have different goals, right? But only one goal can be priority. And then at that time, the priority for that community is to gain feedback and insight, right? So they want members who are interacting with that particular Web3 application, right? When they come in, they want to gain feedback from how they use their product. That is the main reason. So as a community manager, one of the responsibilities that you would have would be to get this feedback members, to get this insight on how to improve the product. And then that information, you would send it to the people who would make decisions based off of it, right? So if you remember in our first class, we talked about the different types of communities that exist. So you need to understand. I remember we mentioned the product communities. So most times, product communities, they create community to get feedback and insight into the products that they have. Now, we have communities that exist for acquisition, right? The main reason why they exist is to gain new customers. Oh, somebody said they can't hear us. Try joining the huddle. So the main reason why they exist would be to gain new members or users through community experiences, right? And then moving on, we have the C. C means contribution. So in this case, it could be that you are involved with a community, right, that is concerned about increasing content, code, or even action from the members. So for instance, if it's an open source project, right? They can create a community because they want people to contribute code to what they're building, right? So communities exist because they want members to be able to have a space to collaborate, right? Thereby increasing the user generated content from their community. And then we also have the E, right? E in this case means engagement, right? And then engagement in this case would be to increase participation in community activities, right? So there are communities that one of their priority would be to increase engagement, right? Why would they want to do this? Because they believe that when members are engaged, there is a sense of ownership and belonging, right? So if you listening to me, you are a part of any community and you are highly engaged in that community, right? There is a chance that you feel a sense of belonging to that community. There is a sense of belonging and ownership that you feel, and that makes you more likely to stay loyal to that community in this case. And then we have X, which is success, right? So most communities exist because they want to connect community members to share best practices to drive product adoption and customer expansion, right? So this model is a model by CMX, right? So it's the spaces model. Community exists, for different reasons. At different time, there are different goals that the community wants to exist. And this can be from a community of support to product to acquisition, contribution, engagement, or for success, right? Sometimes I know that this can be, too much to take in at once. And, you're trying to figure out how do you set smart goals. At the same time, how do you use the spaces model to set goals? Now, if you don't know what goals to set, there are some examples of goals that I have put forward that you can actually set depending on the type of community that you have. Let's move to the next slide. Now, one of the goals that you could have could be you for a particular let's say for this quarter of the year, for the last quarter of the year, or for the first month working with the company, right? Or for whatever timeline that you have, one of your goal could be to increase the number of active community members by 20%, right? Another goal could also be, let's say, remember we talked about the product communities and setting goals that align with product communities. And in this case, if you're working for a brand that has a product, right, and their priority is to improve their product roadmap, one of the responsibilities that you would have in this case, since it is a product community, right, you would be to gain, you could say, 100 feedback, right? 50 feedback, 200 feedbacks, right? Make sure that this goal is actually achievable, right? I know that sometimes we set goals and we want to achieve these big goals, but make sure your goals are realistic and achievable, right? So working for a product community could be you want to gain 100 feedback submission from community members on the new product, right? And then forward that information to the product team developing your product. Your product could be anything in Web3. It could be from a wallet, right, which is the most common that we have, right? Literally to any other product. It could even be to a protocol, a DeFi protocol, right? They want to know how people are using the DEX, what issues people are having. Is it UI? Is it UX? And one of the metrics that you will track would be, the questions that people are asking and the complaints from using your product, right? So a lot of things as a community manager, you need to understand how to listen properly, right? By listening, to different things that may not speak directly to you but occurring in your community, you can actually understand what's going on in the community. And then you can also have another goal, which could be like in this case, you want to organize a monthly meetup, right? To discuss and collaborate on projects. It could be virtual. I know that a lot of community managers, their roles are transcended, like to organizing and hosting physical meetups, right? So that it could also be organizing a monthly meetup, right, to discuss and collaborate on projects. So let's say in that case, this now falls under the C of the spaces model, which is contribution, right? You could also be you want to create a knowledge base of resources for your community members, or you want to you want to launch a community ambassador program to promote the community and recruit new members. This kind of goal falls under the acquisition principle of the spaces model, right? So it's important that when you set goals, make sure that you know the goals are relevant and the goals are timely, right? A community can have multiple goals, right? A community could be, a community can, for instance, be a support community, right? And also a product. So meaning you're offering support to your members and you also want to gain feedback. But at each point in time, only one goal is priority, right? So one goal that directly achieves value for the organization at that point in time, right? So like when it comes to setting goals, flexibility and the willingness to adapt to your goals is essential, right? So things change, and in Web3, things change faster, right? So you need to learn how to adjust your goal as your community evolves. So if your community moves from, product, it moves to support, or it moves to success, right? You have to be flexible and evolve as it evolves, right? So you can also conduct surveys, right? Ask for feedback from your members, understand their expectations. When you know what members are expecting from the community, right? You know the kind of content that you put out, right? And you know how to develop a plan to achieve these goals, right? So setting community goals is one of the first things that you want to do when let's say you just got a job as a community manager. And one mistake that I see a lot of community managers do is they try to set these goals on their own, right? They try to set this goal on their own, and sometimes this can be misaligned, right? It may not be aligned with what brings immediate value and is relevant to the organization at that point in time. Of course, it's good to get engagement and everything, but at each point in time, the brand has a goal that is relevant to it at that time, right? So that is the goal that should be your priority. So make sure that you understand and you know how to ask the right questions to understand the goal that brings value for your organization at that point in time. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk about how to define your target audience. I like this very much. I like this topic very much. In this case, right, as a community manager, sometimes you can feel like, oh, the community already exists and they already know who their target audience is. But do you know who your target audience is? Do you know who you will be talking to? How much do you know your target audience? Right? So defining your target audience and identifying your target audience doesn't just apply to you as a community manager if you're starting from the scratch of the community. You could meet the community already like at a high point and you're just a new community manager to that community. It's very important for you to also understand the target audience and define it, right? So who is the community for? You are doing this for you to understand the community and make sure that the content you're putting out is relevant for the community at that point in time. So who is your community for? Right? This is one question you want to ask. And one of the ways that I like to do this, even for setting community goals and objectives, sometimes I can be very old-fashioned. I like to use pen to paper, right? So I have those questions down I do my research, and I just write down my thoughts and what I get from my research, and that somehow clears my thoughts, right? So this is a very intentional act that you should do, right? It's a very intentional act that you should do. You have to be very intentional about the goals that the community have. Make sure your goals are aligned with the people who have a stake in that community, with the stakeholders, the founders, the CEOs, whoever has a stake. Make sure your goals are aligned with what they want. So you want to ask question, what is my priority at this point in time? That is a very important question for you, because that will help you determine the metrics that you measure. Now, in this case, for defining your target audience, you want to make sure that whatever you are doing is relevant for your target audience at that point in time. So who is your community for, right? Are you a DeFi project? Is it a DJing project, right? So is it an NFT? Is it for NFT DJs? What does the average community member looks like? Because creating content for an NFT enthusiast, right? That kind of content might not appeal to a DJing, to a DeFi DJing enthusiast, right? So who is your community for? If your community, is for like a more specific group, you want to target those. It could be developers, could be investors, could be artists, could be entrepreneurs, right? Also remember that your community can also have, different member personnel, right? It doesn't mean that, okay, let's say, for instance, we have the Arbitrum community, right? One of their target audience would be developers, right? Because they want people to build, right? As well as investors, right? NFTs to artists too, right? So in that case, they have different target audience, and the content they will put out to this different kind of audience will vary, right? They won't put out a content. The community manager, for instance, will not put out a content for developers for the average investors. So as we move forward, you will learn how to create your member personnel. So let's move on. Now, another question you want to answer for yourself is, and these are things that you do at the beginning, right? So let's say you just got a role at a company, right? These are things that you do. If you could also do it if you're currently working for a brand, right? You want to see your strategy and know, how far you have been going, and if you have been targeting the right set of people, right? So probably that could be why you have been struggling, because you're giving your content to the people that it's not meant for, or you're giving the wrong content to the right audience. Now, you also want to identify who your community is not for. So it could be that your community is not for this set of people, right? And then what are their needs and their interests? For your community members, what motivates them to take action, right? Well, let's say a DJing community, for the average DJing, right, what is their motivation? That's very important. Now, you also want to understand their demographics, right? Their age, gender, location, occupation, right? And this can help you to, target your outreach efforts more effectively. Now, once you have a good understanding of who your community is for, who your community is not for, right? It doesn't mean that you are not inclusive. It just means that this community would not appeal to this set of audience, right? And then you want to know what motivates them to take action, right? So you could use yourself, for instance, the communities that you are a part of, right? What motivates you to be in those communities? What motivates you to take action? What is motivating you to be here? Or rather, what has motivated you to be here learning about Web3 community management? Right? Those are the things that I understand, and make sure that my content aligns with your needs. Right? Let's move to the next slide. Now, once you understand your target audience, you create an audience persona. Right? So what is an audience persona? It's just a fictional representation of your ideal member. That's who your audience persona is. And it should include their demographics, interests, needs, motivation. Right? So understanding the core of who makes up your community is very important. How do you create a member personnel? You can do this by their names, their basic demographics, that's their age range, occupation, the internal what affects them internally, their internal pain points, needs, goals, what are their external fears, challenges, frustration, who is a competitor. Is there your community exists, right? There's a competitor, right? Who is the competitor? And then what is your proposition? Right? So competitors are communities that your members already exist in. What kind of content are they using to what kind of content in this case are they using to um are they using in that community, right? And then your proposition, your opportunities are your proposition, right? So these are the position points you will use when you're inviting new members into your community. I mean, I've been talking for like 30 minutes. Are we together? Just give me a wave or give me a gun show. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. We're following. All right. So in this case, let's get more practical. Now, let me give you because this is going to be a part of our assessment. Now, let me give you an example of a member personnel for Third Academy. Right. So name. Let's use Rita. Let's use Rita in this case. Right. It doesn't mean it's me, but let's use Rita. Now, what is the basic demographics? We could say age. We could say 24 or 25, right? Female, location, we could say San Francisco. What is my occupation? What is the occupation of Rita? Could be marketing and communications lead, right? Remember that this is a fictional representation of your ID community member. Now, education. What education does Rita has? Rita has BSc in marketing or any other related courses. Now, I have formed a fictional representation of what an ideal member of my community is. I've given you their demographics. Now let's come to the internal pain point. Why would Rita want to be a part of Third Academy, for instance, right? First, one pain point that Rita has is lack of knowledge about Web3. Remember, Third Academy is an educational platform, right? A career launch pad, right? Launching Web3 professionals into their dream career. Now, another pain point that Rita has or possibly has is that she's currently feeling overwhelmed by the complexity of Web3, right? So as the founder or CEO, or let's say as I'm creating Third Academy or as a community manager of Third Academy, I understand that one of the pain points that my community has is they are feeling overwhelmed by the complexity. And the second thing is there's lack of or the depth of knowledge about Web3 or Web3 education. And then the final pain point that Rita has is she doesn't know where to start with her Web3 career. She doesn't know where to start being a Web3 marketer. She doesn't know where to start being a Web3 community manager, right? So I know that one of the things that my community Third Academy caters for is for those who are not sure where to start their Web3 careers. Remember, you can do this for your community, right? So now I have the internal pain point of Rita. Now, what is the need that Rita has that comes from within? This is internal, remember. What is the need that she has, right? One of the needs that Rita has is, she needs a comprehensive and easy to understand education in Web3, right? So you see that her needs directly solves her pain points. The first pain point was lack of knowledge about Web3. And now one of the internal needs that she needs access to a comprehensive and easy to understand education on Web3, right? What other needs does Rita has? Because she's feeling overwhelmed by the complexity of Oh, can happen to the best of us. Thank you. Oh my god. Yeah. Are we playing any games? Where did you lose me? Can you hear me? Thank you. Well, happens to the best of us. Hi guys. Is everyone still here? Hi. Give me a gun show. Give me a gun show. Come on. Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, I'm just going to yes, all right. So where did we stop? Why did you lose me? I was talking about um a member personnel for a community like Third Academy. Was that where we stopped? Hi guys, were you guys following up? Where did we stop? Oh, right. Okay. So let me just quickly go over that. I was talking about a member personnel for Third Academy. I was talking about the internal pain points, and I said lack of knowledge about Web3, feeling overwhelmed by how complex Web3 is, and someone who is not sure where to start their Web3 careers, right? Now I understand the internal pain points that my average community member goes through. Now, what are their internal needs, right? To get their internal needs, you need to understand that it directly solves the internal pain points that they have. So, for instance, lack of knowledge, right? They need a comprehensive and easy to understand education on Web3. Feeling overwhelmed, they need a community of like-minded to learn from and network with. And then not sure where to start their Web3 careers, they need guidance and mentorship from experienced Web3 professionals. Do you see how I have identified my members' needs, from the pain points that they have. So a good starting point for you in this case would be to identify for someone who wants to join, let's say, your DeFi community, what could be the kind of pain point that they could have, right? In this case, one could be, oh, probably they're just tired of the traditional financial system and they need somewhere else to keep their funds. Could also be that because you have to create different member personnel. Another could just be that, oh, they need an easy way to transfer funds across different countries. That's easier, that's cheaper and faster. And it does it for them, right? So your product does it for them, right? So that way you're able to understand your members' pain points and needs. Now, what are their goals, right? So two goals that and I'm sure as members of Third Academy, you must have been able to relate with one of the pain points that I have mentioned, or one of the needs that I have mentioned. That is to show you that I understand what a community member. I understand my member personnel, and what a community member needs. Okay. Let's Good. Now, let's talk about the goals. Two goals that my average member would have would be to learn about Web3 and how to use it. And the next goal would be they want to launch a successful Web3 career, right? So I've not gotten to this slide yet. Now, when we talk about we're still creating our member personnel, when it comes to the external fears, could be that you're afraid of being left behind, you're unable to find a job, or you're not able to contribute to the development of Web3. And the challenge, can we go to the previous slide, please? And the challenges that you could be having could be lack of accessible and affordable Web3 resources. And even another external challenges could be the competitive nature of the Web3 job market, right? And then competitors, who are the competitors, right? My competitors in this case would be other Web3 educational platforms, right, that are offering Web3 courses. And then what would my proposition be? This is, I'm taking time to go through this because it's very important and it would help you know the kind of content to create for your members. Now, my proposition would be, one of the propositions that I would use would be that Third Academy is a free and accessible Web3 educational platform that provides comprehensive and easy to understand education on Web3, right? So I have multiple propositions, right? But that is just one of it that I would use to attract members into my community. So creating multiple personals are where you get realistic with your personnel, right? So create a member personnel per solution that your community provides, right? So after creating your personnel, remember that your audience strategy, that is your target audience strategy, is not set in stone, right? So you have to put it to test, refine it, evaluate its effectiveness. You need to keep learning about your community members, listen to their needs, and adjust your approach accordingly, right? So let's move on. Now let's talk about how you can create a community identity, right? This is a very important topic. Just like members have an identity, just like you have member identity, the community should also have a clear identity and purpose, right? So what is a community identity? A community identity is the unique personality of your community, right? Your community identity is what makes your community stand out from other communities and gives your member a sense of belonging, right? So your community identity is very essential for a thriving community because it is what would help members to identify with you easily, right? Because it provides that sense of ownership and belonging. Now, 4 factors that contribute to your community identity: your values, the goals, the norms, and the culture, right? Those 4 things. And the value of your community are the principles that your community holds there, right? That's valuable to your community, right? These are what guide how you operate and how members interact with each other. The next is your goal. Remember, we've talked about the goal. Most communities, the community members and you as a community manager, you work together to achieve a particular goal. Now, when there is a goal that the community is striving to achieve, this will give your community a sense of purpose. I mentioned in our first class about, I don't know how many of us have heard of the Constitution DAO. I don't think they exist anymore. But when they did, I think they raised about, they had a goal. They raised about 40 million, 42 million USD, if I'm not wrong. And they wanted to get a copy of the US Constitution, right? That was a goal that they were all striving towards, right? So if a community has a goal, right, it gives them this sense of purpose. To identify your community goals and you're all working together to achieve it, right? So that's that. And then norms, right? The norms of a community are the unspoken rules, right? So they have to create a sense of order and predictability. And then also the culture. What is the culture of your community? The culture in this case is the sum of the values, the goals, and the norms. Remember, we said your community identity is what differentiates your community from others. So it is what makes your community unique and special. So you need to be clear about the values, the goals, and the norms that you want your community to embody. Now, how can you do this, right? Sometimes it can be overwhelming because you don't know where to start from. Surveys, member survey, get feedback from members. I mean, your members are the best persons for you to learn about their needs and what they want. Right? So do surveys, observe how the community operates. Once you understand the current state, you can make changes, right? So another way that you can also create a community identity is to use a symbol system. Now, one of the big supporters that I've seen of this symbol system and creating a strong member identity is Elliot Covert. He's the guest that we have on Thursday, right? He has a whole book on symbol systems, right? And you know, that's one of the things that he'll be talking to us on Thursday about how you can create a symbol system. I'm sure that many of us, when we see the green leaf, we understand that it lends, right? So that's the image, right? And there are some things that there's some emojis or images that you see on city, you immediately recognize it as a part of this brand. That's one. For example, safari, you see the lion, right, which indicates like a sense of like a lion, the safari, right? A lion in like the desert, the king of the forest, and this indicate like they see themselves as growth leaders in Web3, right? That's an identity that they all rally around. Now, you can create a symbol system, a unique name. For example, at TED Academy, we have Teddy, right? I'm not sure it has a dictionary meaning, right? But it's something that we all connect with, right? So I do a merch, I write Teddy on it, and a person who is a part of TED Academy sees me, and they're like, hey, we connect instantly just because of that word Teddy, right? So different communities have different things that can help them connect. And also, you want to make sure that you are consistent with your graphics, with your branding, right? I'm sure if you see the TED Academy logo or if you see a flyer from TED Academy, it's very easy for, yes, we have a member of, yes, you see what I'm saying? You see, we have a member from Safari, right? So that is it. You see that Ronnie just, he has immediately identified himself with the Safari community. So that's something about building a community identity. It might take a while. On Thursday, I'm sure that if you have questions about that, just bring your questions for Elliot, and he has a whole book on that. He'll be able to answer you. Now, let's move on to building your community guidelines. Next slide. Now, every community needs a set of guidelines to keep it running smoothly, right? And with the decentralized nature of Web3, you have people that and your and your community from like different cultures, different background, different understanding, right? Now, building a community guideline will help your community to run smoothly, right? So this your policy should, when you're creating your community guideline, make sure it covers from your content moderation to how to prevent spam to harassment, right? And you also want to be clear about the consequences for violating these principles, right? So some tips that you can use, you can start by defining your community's value and the purpose, right? And then you also want to identify the types of behavior that you want to encourage and discourage. For example, you can say, we encourage members to ask questions, answer questions, share resources that you think will be helpful to others. And then one of the behaviors that you discourage will be that, we discourage spam, right? Avoid sharing links that appear shady, right? And you could also talk to your members about staying safe, right? And then be clear in your language, right? Tell them how to stay safe, right? And in this case, you could tell them that they will not receive a DM from you asking for their seed phrase. If, for instance, you have a community that deals with that, they will not receive a message from you asking for seed phrase or asking for funds, right? You want to make sure you keep your community safe. That's a part of your responsibility as much as you can while they are in your community, right? And then, just like I said, use examples to illustrate your points, and then tell them who to call for help, right? So that your community knows that, if they have an unanswered question, they know who they can easily reach out to get help. And then finally, understand that your community is a living document, right? So as you move on, you improve it as you get feedback from your members. You also want to talk about punishment for violating behaviors, right? So for example, the consequences could be, proportionate to the severity of the offense, right? So you could say, for a first time spam, it could be a warning. If you repeat it twice, it could be a complete ban from the community, right? And enforcing the guideline, ensuring also that everyone knows the consequences. Now let's move on to onboarding. Are we following? Are we following? Are we following? Are we following? Let's give a gun show or a fist bump, just like we have on the screen. Yeah, yeah. Yes, 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 yes. Right, right, right. That's right. Now, community onboarding. I like this topic very much because your onboarding directly influences your retention rate. Now, let's get up for a bit. I like this topic very much. Now, when it comes to hold on. Yeah, so when it comes to community onboarding, right? It's just a way that you welcome new members to your community and help them to get up to speed on your values, culture, and resources. A way that you welcome new members and help them get up to speed on your community's value, culture, purpose, as well as resources, right? So it is a very essential part of building a thriving community, right? Because it helps to create a welcoming and supportive environment, right? Where new members can feel comfortable, ask questions, and contribute. Now, there are different ways that you can onboard members into your community, right? And each would vary depending on the type of community that you have. There are some communities that use a welcome message, a written message, or a video, right? I think the BFF community, they have a welcome video from one of the founders. that tells you, hey, welcome to BFF. We're a community of this, that, of creatives, artists. This is, if you need help, tag this person, resources, this is it. Our events, you want to attend any of our events, set your reminders here, right? There's just a whole video on that, right? A community that use messages, right? So there's a channel on Discord where you can go. For example, you can check the one we have on Terra Academy. We have a channel that says get onboarded. You can see how, right, where you learn about our community in very easy steps there, right? But that is not the end of it, right? Another, because you want to, it's not just about welcoming your members and say, hey, welcome, right? I mean, just like you going into a crowd for the first time, and you don't know what to do, right? So you need someone to hold your hand and show you around. That's how it feels like for some members, right? So something else that you want to do is to create a list of resources, right? This could be like, for members to learn about your community, could be your FAQs, your official links, your social media channels, your websites, right? So create these resources and make it accessible, right? So I may come into your community, I don't feel a sense of belonging yet. I don't even understand what you're about. But when I'm able to see these things, have a link to your FAQ, to your website, social media page, gradually I'm coming up to speed on, oh, this is what this community is about, right? So make sure you have a list of resources that members can learn about your community and make it accessible. Now, for the next one, these are usually for like not so much like smaller communities, small to medium communities, right? Where you can assign more experienced member to help the new members get up to speed, right? So if your community is still up and coming, right, this would greatly improve your retention, your onboarding, as well as your retention rate. And then you want to host regular events or meetups, right? That's another way that members can participate and learn more about what you do and how you intend to solve the problem that you want to solve. And then also do a follow-up, right? So this could be through DMs, right? You could do this through DMs. Hey, I saw you joined the community recently. Just checking in to see if you need help with accessing the resources or if you need help with anything, right? Feel free to come in and just, if you want to have any conversations, right? So don't. Actually, a lot of people do follow-ups and they sound very robotic, right? Avoid sounding robotic, right? And sometimes this cannot be scalable for large communities, right? So I think the Mi6 bot does it. And there are also other bots that automate this process, right? And members, the people you are sending it to, they are aware that it's coming from a bot. And then another thing about your onboarding is that you have to be patient and welcoming, right? It takes time for new members to get acclimated to a new community. So be patient and welcoming and help them get the most out of the experience, right? Additional tips that you can use in your community onboarding is, let's move to the next slide. Some additional tips that you can use for your community onboarding would be that you need to be clear about your community values and culture. We mentioned it before because you want members to easily learn about, get up to speed about your values and culture, right? So be clear about it. Can we move to the next slide? Now, you also want to make it easy, just like I said, for members to find the information that they need, right? So we mentioned it earlier, FAQs, list of resources, wiki, make sure that these resources are available. And then a checklist. I like the checklist very much, right? Give members a checklist, more like giving them a task, a checklist that they could follow, right? If they just come in, hey, claim this role, send a message to this channel, do this, right? Depending on the goal that you want to achieve, to lead members through your onboarding. And then to also improve your community onboarding, you want to, okay, let me leave this screen. You want to also make sure that you're responsive to their question and concern. Sometimes new members can come in and they can be asking question that has been asked before. If there's a way you can automate that process where they can easily find the answer to that question, right, that will work, right? But be responsive when members ask question, have their question answered. And then when celebrate your new members' contribution, right? This will help them to feel valued, right? This will help them feel valued and have that sense of ownership. Now, this can be very daunting sometimes, right? You can do all of this and your community onboarding is not improving. Now, what can you do in this case? Reach out, right? Reach out personally to your members. If it's not working, you feel like you're not seeing the results, you can reach out and you know the members join the community for a reason, and it could be that you have not been able to meet that reason, right? So you want to find out from members, go on a call with as many community members as you can, right? Have a conversation with as many community members as you can, understand their pain points. Why did they join? Have you met their needs? What can you do better? How were they onboarded? Right? Have they been onboarded? Do they understand what your community is about? What do they feel about your community? You should be, as a community manager, you should be speaking more often with your members. And this doesn't only have to happen in the general community, right? So you want to go into their DMs and learn from them what's happening and how they feel. Now, I don't know if our screen is still here, but let's move on to the next to the final thing that we want to talk about today. Yes, the next slide, please. Yes. Promoting diversity and inclusivity. Right? Now, as a community manager, one other thing that influences your community onboarding is how much you're able to promote diversity and inclusivity within your community. Correct? Now, here are some tips that you can use to promote diversity and inclusivity in your community. Right? So, you want to create an inclusive environment where members feel comfortable participating. The next thing you want to also do is, as a community manager, you're human, right? And you have your own biases, you have your own preferences, right? But as a community manager, you also have to be aware, right? There's a self-awareness that you know that you have to deal with, right? You have to be self-aware of your biases and your preferences and how they affect your interaction with others, right? Be mindful not to project your opinion on others, right? You should be very, very mindful of that and create an environment where people are able to express themselves without causing harm to another person, right? So another way you can also promote diversity is you have to also be mindful of your language. Language is very, very important, right? Be mindful, avoid using vulgar words, right? Words that do not uplift people, because as a community manager, you are a community leader, right? And your words can influence. So be mindful of the language that you use within your community and for your community members, right? So make sure that the language that you use promotes diversity, empowers people, and also promotes inclusivity, right? And also, you also have to be open to feedback, right? Sometimes this feedback might not be what you're expecting, but there's always something that you can get from it, right? So when you receive negative criticism or negative feedback, be very careful not to react to it, right? And to pick out the lesson from it, right? And then learn how you can make the community more inclusive. Also, you also want to provide clear and concise documentation in multiple languages if necessary. And remember that sometimes you may not be able to do this on your own. So you may need to ask for help from people who are higher, right? If your community is very diverse, right? There are people with different languages who are struggling with English, with the general language of communication, right? You can provide your documentation in multiple languages if necessary, and if there's a demand for that. That way you are being more inclusive, right? And then also, you also want to host events and meetups that are open to everyone. As a community manager, make sure that one of the things that you can also take into consideration is your timing, right? So make sure that your timing is one that at least a large majority of your community can participate in, right? So now let's move on to the next slide. Why should you be interested in promoting diversity and inclusivity? I mean, why should you care, right? So one of the reasons why you should care about promoting diversity and inclusivity from the diverse Web3 community is that it leads to increased creativity and innovation, right? So diverse communities are more likely to develop new and innovative ideas, right? This is because they have different perspective and experiences to draw from. Another reason why you should care about about promoting diversity and inclusivity is that you get a stronger community from there, right? So when everyone feels welcome, right, and included, the community is more stronger and resilient. You also have a better reputation, right? Because a community that is diverse and inclusive, you're more likely to attract new members and partners. So as community managers, you can create better communities for everyone by simply promoting diversity and being more inclusive. Now we've taken a lot of time. We've taken 6 minutes into our time, and just to recap what we have said and talk about our class assessment. Let's move to the next slide. Now to recap what we have said in the last 1 hour. We mentioned about setting community goals and objectives, which is a crucial step in building a thriving Web3 community. We also mentioned the Spaces model by CMS, a very helpful framework, for thinking about the different types of goal that your Web3 community can have. Remember that your community can have different goals at different time, but only one goal can be priority at a time. We also talked about your target, identifying your target audience and knowing that your audience strategy is not static, right? And as your community grows and evolves, your understanding of your audience may change. Keep learning about your community members, listen to their needs, have that conversation with them in the DMs, understand what their needs are and their pain points, and adjust your approach accordingly, right? And then we also mentioned as a community manager, you need to promote diversity and you need to be more inclusive, right? Be mindful of your language, right? So by being more inclusive, you're likely to attract new members and partners, and you can create better communities for everyone by simply promoting diversity and activity. Now we have come to the end of our class, but we have also come to the beginning of our class assessment. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yes. So we have come to the end of our class today. Yay! We have also come to the beginning of our class assessment, right? So we're not just focused on the theory, the teaching part, also going to be involved in carrying out practical about this. Now, for our class assessment, this assessment will be done it would contribute to the final assessment and the score that would lead to awarding NFT certifications. So I encourage you to take this seriously. Now, for the assessment, you're going to choose your community, right? It could be a community you're already working for, a community that you like, or a community that you would want to create in the near future, or just any community, right? So choose a community, the name of the community, and identify the type of community that it is. It could be practice-based, could be practice based, of course. It could be practice based, it could be product based, action based, hybrid, virtual. What kind of community is it? Right? Now, remember this assignment, this assessment is on a, you can do it on a Google Docs or a slide, whichever you prefer. Google Docs is preferable because we would edit and add more to it until the end of the class. Now you want to set community goal, right? For that community you have identified, set goal or goals, right? For the last quarter of 2023. You could set goal for, November, could be for December, could be for 1 month, right? So let's work with that. And then create a member personnel, right? Create at least two member personnel. I'm going to share with you on Discord the how to create your member personnel, and then also create an onboarding package. What do I mean? How, just in your document, how would you onboard your members? Do a video message? Are you going to approach them in the DM? Would you have a channel on Discord to welcome them? What does your welcome message looks like, right? And then also create your community guidelines. I think we have you can use the TED Academy's Discord as an inspiration if you want. Also, feel free to be creative with it. And to submit this, just open a course ticket on Discord to submit the assessment, and then we'll work on it from there. I know that this can be a lot, right? But on Discord on Wednesday, we are going to have a 1 hour section to go over this assignment, and that's going to happen at 3 p.m. UTC on Wednesday, right? So we'll have this we'll go over the assignment, the assessment together on Discord so that you can fully learn how to do this by yourself, and for when you get the job that you're looking for, you know that you have the skills to take part in all of this. Now, just like I mentioned, this is a living document, right? And for our next class, we'll deal with engagement. Let's go to the next class. The next slide, please. For our next class, we'll deal with engagement. You'll also update your docs, and when we move to community leadership, incentives, creating your community strategy, right? Would continuously update this document. Now, thank you very much for staying to the end of the class. For next week, we have our community engagement. We'll talk about engagement and all the challenges that you have engaging your Web3 communities and how you can deal with it. Don't also forget, this Thursday, we have a section with Elliot Covert, and he will tell us how to set community goals and onboard your members. And the time is the same as this class, but I know a lot of us experience challenges while coming in. That's why we send the link 30 minutes earlier so that you can have time to troubleshoot before the start of the class. All right, thank you very much for coming to class today. The space will close the wall will be closed in a few minutes. So, feel free to learn more how to, use the space. This extra 10 minutes that we have, you can learn how to move around and how to use the space, how to sit, how to stand, and just take screenshots, share on Twitter, tag me to it, and I'll make sure to retweet it. All right. So, thank you very much, and see